Hello guys, my name is Sandra Guadalupe Calderon and I hope that you are having a wonderful day. Today I'm going to provide you a summary about the class that I have on this semester, starting in the Unit 1 and finish in the Unit 4. The Unit 1 is Introduction to English and American Literature. The introduction to literature is this lesson that we learned important terminology and basic information. For example, British authors, American authors, and the learning competence that we had on this was to understand socio-historical and socio-cultural highlights of the writing literature of the English language. Elements of the competence on this unit was to identify the main ideas on the literature text in English, and second was to apply reading techniques in literature text to identify relevant details. We read in this the powerful and the American literature, British literature one, the famous British authors, for example, is William Shakespeare, also known as the part in the most famous of British writers. We have another one that is Jane Austen, that was on the 1775, 1817. Then we have Charles Dickens, 1812 to 1870. Ian Fleming from 1908 to 1964, and George Eliot from 1819 to 1890. The American authors are John Smith, William Bradford, Edward Whistler, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Poe, and Anna Bradstreet, Edward Tyler. These were some American authors that we learned in the Unit 1. Now I'm going to proceed with the second unit, that is Periods of British Literature. First, we have the lesson 1 to Old English. The period is also known as the era of ancient Britain, which was a time in which the Germanic Old English was spoken and a culture brought by the Anglo Saxons and Jutes from the continent was assimilated by the Celts and other native Britons. Many cultures and ethnic groups were in conflict in ancient Britain. The Romans, Germanic invaders, and Christian missionaries brought as a diverse mix of cultures of the Celtic tribes who occupied the island. The Roman influence that they have was Northern European invaders, social classes, royalty, Anglo-Saxon, and religion, and coming of Christianity, and importance of the Old English literature was the Old English Christian poetry, the poet Caedmon and Caedmon Jim. Now I'm going to proceed with Middle English. Literature in England in this period was not using English and Latin but in French, as well and developed in directions set largely in France. Epic and elegy gave way to romance and lyrics. English reading was fully revived in English after 1360 and flowered in the region of Richard II, 1372-99. It gained a literary standard in London English after 1425 and developed modern forms of verse, prose, and of Trema. The language after the Norman conquest, when aristocrats embraces the Norman French dialect. The architecture, although little great literature, was written in English during the 3 centuries after 1066. There was one crowning artist achievement, the completion of 27 great cathedrals of England. Then we have the powerful church. In Norman England, the church became increasingly stone, as evidenced by the construction of the cathedrals. Throughout the church, the culture of grace in Rome was designated nationalism, partly due to the war with France. The English began to take nationalistic pride in their country and language in the 14th century. English instead of French was taught regularly in schools. Social structures by 1250, the steady growth of trade and industry led to a rising middle class, with guilds to project members who practiced craft and trades. The plague reduced the labor force and led to higher wages and to the demands of the peasant revolt in 1381. The Middle English has a language principal difference between Old and Middle English is the grammar was simplified at the vocabulary and was greatly enlarged. The inflections words ending showing the relationship between sentence parts virtual disparate in Middle English. The vocabulary of Old English was primarily Germanic, but Middle English was enriched by verbal words. Middle English spelling is less uniform because it incorporates several regions, dialects each with its own system of representing sounds in reading. Then the pronunciation of Old English guttural sounds was softened in Middle English, but with not consistent system, leading to varied pronunciation of words with the same endings. Renaissance period. Now, in the Renaissance period, in the lesson 2, the Renaissance means rebirth from 1500 from 1500 to 1600. The world was reborn in many ways. The Renaissance began in Italy, especially in art and architecture. You know that Italy is really grateful in art and architecture, and in the 15th century, as England became the most powerful nation in Europe in the late 16th century, new worlds were discovered and new ways of seeing and thinking developed. This period is also known as the Elizabeth period and the Age of Shakespeare in the history of English literature. The major characteristic of the Renaissance was its focus on humanism, a man's concern with himself as an object of observation. The number one is the rediscovery of classical antiquity, particularly of ancient Greece. Number two, the rediscovery of the eternal universe and its importance for making And number 3 is the problem of humans' personalities. 4, the last one is the enhanced sensitivity to formal beauty and the cultivation of the aesthetic sense. Then we have the modern English. English, as we could see in the Middle English period, had triumphed over French and has a spoken language by the mid 14th century. Therefore, we can say that the growth of English, the vocabulary expanded greatly in change in the grammatical element. Nouns, older plurals like am and nai, were replaced by is and goes. Pronouns, ye was being replaced by you and thu, the, and I were disappearing from popular speech. The pronunciation had its first record using night in 1598. Verbs, the ending of words like give it, taketh, changed to gives and takes. Poetry of the Renaissance period, the ability to write poetry was considered as a necessary accomplishment for a Renaissance gentleman, and many courtiers were indeed accomplished poets. Some of these poems, some of the foreign influence are Sir Thomas White, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, Edmund Spenser, and now we have the neoclassical period. Neoclassical literature was written between 1660 and 1798. This period is divided into 3 sections. First is the Restoration period, the Augustan period, and the Age of Johnson. Some characteristic of this period at neoclassic literature is characterized by order, accuracy, and structure. The other characteristic is opposed to Renaissance attitude. Creators in these periods portrayed men as inherent flaws. Then we can follow with the August age, 1700-1750. The Age of Johnson, 1750-1790. And some of the famous authors and poets are Alexander Pope, 1688-1744, and John Drayton, 19th August 1631, 12th of May 1700. Samuel Johnson, September 18, 1709 to December 13, 1784. Then we have the lesson 3 in the unit 2, Romantic period. The Romantic period, most historians of English literature, marks the beginning of the Romantic periods as 1798, when Wordsworth and Coleridge changed the course of English poetry by publishing lyrical ballads. In that short time, England changed from a predominantly rural agricultural society to an urban industrial one. It was a time of liberal thought, most of the Romantic careers and come of age. In the aftermath, of the revolution in American in French, and they held human rights. Often the terms romantic literature, particularly poetry, evokes that the connotation of nature poetry. Although nature is an important component in much of romantic literature, romanticism is much more than recording the beauties of the natural worlds, and romanticism is certainly not what modern readers usually think of when we hear the words romance and romantic. Romanticism doesn't refer to romantic love, the reaction against many facets of neoclassicism. The following chart lists contrasting views of neoclassic and romanticism. Some of the characters of this romantic are literature, medievalism, mysticalism, sensibility, primitivism, and individualism. And some the lyric vowels are form of the literature are novel, lyric poetry, romantic ode, and ballad. The key point to remember about this period are Romanticism grew from a political and philosophical milieu that prompted democracy, acquired nature, and spirit. Then we have lyric ballads published in 1798, the Victorian Age. The Victorian era is an age of British history taking place during the reign of Queen Victoria's 1837-1901. It is one of the longest regions that exist in that area. Then we have some characteristics of the Victorians. Characteristics of the Victorian age, the discoveries of science has particular effects on the literature of the Victorian age. We have some characteristics that are realism, moral purpose, doubts or contradictory fights and philosophies, and idealisms. Then we have the growth of the Victorian age, Victoria prose, Victoria poetry, Victoria drama, and Victorian novel. That was very important for that area. And the Edwardian age. The Edwardian era is a period of time of British history that commonly dates from the end of the Victorian era in 1901 until the beginning of the First World War. In 1914, the period is named after the reign of King Edward. This Edwardian literature, the Edwardian era saw the origins of movements such as a modernism, the Bloomsbury group, and somewhat ironically the Georgian poets. The Bloomsbury group has a collective of authors, painters, and critics who will often meet in the London district of their name. Some characteristics of Edwardian literature is Edwardian literature followed the Victorian era, and the period had a transformative effect of history. There are, however, some familiar characteristics developed in Edwardian literature that are still used today. Check out some of the major themes: questioning the society, modernism, and popular novels. Now we can follow with the Georgian period. Georgian history was a period in history runs from 1910 up until the death of King George. In 1936, it was a turbulent war began in 1914. The years following the war saw increasing rise in fascism that preceded World War II. The Georgian poetry characteristics. These are the more familiar features of Georgian poetry, including its use of formal techniques, romantics, and sentimentally. Formal techniques, romantics, and sentimentally are the characteristics for that area. Now we have the modern period. Modernism is an artist and literature movement that began in Europe, eventually reaching the US during a time of change, confusion, discovery, inventions, and war. Then we have the postmodern period. Postmodernism is a literary movement that began as a reaction to World War II. The poets, authors, artists, scholars, and critics of this movement are known for their interest in redefining literature. Now, some characteristics of postmodern literature theory is postmodernity. Its portrait has a crise of individual growth forced by late capitalism and late modernity. Use of intertextuality, pastiche, and parody has a narrative techniques, framage, and combinant in non-linear narrative. In postmodern text, text science, the disjoint postmodern successfully. Now we are going to, this was that I learned in the unit second, and I think that this was a long unit because it's a very important to know all the history in our past. And now I'm going to follow with the unit third, periods of American literature. American literature was, as we explained in previous the previous unit that we have. This is a long lesson that we have. We are going to start with the lesson, the colonial period. It is like that another colonist in the history of the world, whereas intellectual has fortunes between 1630s and 1690. Some of famous authors of the colonial period was William Bradford, 1590 to 1657, and Brent Street, Edward Tyler, and Michael Brister. Lesson. Now we are going to follow with the lesson second, Revolution Age. Revolutions are area experiencing of the earth of the people. They grow gradually out of new sensibilities and wealth of experiences. It will take 15 years of accumulated history for America to earn its cultural independence. Then we have some American writers that are Washington Irving, James Fenimore Cooper, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Herman Melville. This was some of the American writers that we have in that area. Now I'm going to follow with the American Englishmen, from the 18th century's American. Enlightenment was a movement marked by an emphasis on rational rather than traditional essentials. The Englishmen thinkers and writers were devoted to the ideals of justice, liberty, and equality as the natural rights of man. American Enlightenment authors are Benjamin Franklin, Hector Sir John de Vancouver, Thomas Paine. Now I'm going to follow with the second, with the other, that is neoclassicism, epic, mock epic, and satire. Unfortunately, literature grading was not as simple and direct as political gradings. When trying to grade poetry, most educated authors stumbled into the pitfall of elegant neoclassicism. Women in minorities, although the colonial period produced several women's gradings. Of note, the voluntary area did not further the work of women in minorities despite the many school, magazines, newspapers, and literature clubs that were springing up. Others women writings, a number of accomplished revolutionary area women creators have been rediscovered by feminist scholars Susan Rawson, Hannah Foster, Judith Sargent Murray, and now I'm going to follow with the lesson, with the other lesson, Romantic Period of American Literature. The period of Romanticism represented are rebelled against classism and its values such as a reason and form. Then the romance form is dark and forbidding, indicating how difficult it is to create an identity without an established society. Most of the romantic heroes die in the end. All the sailors except Ismail are thrown in Moby Dick. Has the sensitive but sinful minister Arthur Dimmesfeld, and the letter, the self-divide, tragic note. Some of the major characteristics that we have in this is value feeling into each idealisms and indeed reasoning, place fight inner experience, shunning the artificially of civilization, and everything in the world, including humans begins, is a reflection of divine soul. People can use their intuition to behold God's spirit revealing in nature on their own souls. Now the realism. This is the other lesson that we had in this unit. The realism just is an European. The periods of Romanticism was followed by the periods of realism. Realists left behind styles and topics adopted by the previous generation and rather concentrate. Some characters that we have here are the region of romantic's view of life as too idealistic, objective narrator, realistic authors convey the reality of life however harsh. Nature is a powerful force beyond man's control, and the transitions from romanticism to realism. Number one is transitions from romanticism to realism express transcendental ideas on poetry with realistic detail. Experiment with new poet techniques, such as a free verse in slang written. The Civil War themes primarily second with the war, slavery, women's suffrage, and local color white regionalists focus on a particular regions of the country, emphasize physical landscape, habits, occupation, speech, dialects of the area's people. Now the naturalisms. Realism turned to naturalism. When literature critics were exposed to views of two scientists' political works, like Charles Darwin, Biological Determinants, Sigmund Freud, Physiological Determinants, Karl Marx, Socioeconomic Determinants, and now I'm going to follow with the next lesson, that is now naturalistic period, modernist period. A naturalistic period, a literature movement known as a natural flourish, rose between 1865 and 1900. Émile Zola, a French author, was the first to introduce the idea of literature. Naturalism held that social circumstance, genetics, and environment produce human characters. Natural authors approach human knowledge with a scientific and objective perspective. The evolutionary theory of Charles Darwin had a significant impact on them. Literature naturalism's core elements. The novel was handled as an experiment by naturalist authors so that they could eventually remain environmental. Then we have the modernism from the late 19th century until about the middle of the 20th. A literature movement known as a modernism embraced a number of developing writing methods that had an impact of the development of literature. Then we have some literature modernism characters in this unit that are experimentation, individualism, several perspective, reverse literature device. And we have the lesson 4, the contemporary period. The contemporary period was from 1945 to present. American entered in the peacekeeping business in the 1940s. After the Second World War, there was still a sense of bewilderment among Americans after the wreckage of the war. They were unsure of what to do. Many people lost hope in the general goodness of people, something analogous to realism and naturalism. However, after World War II, many Americans felt patriotic about their nationals. Postmodernism, the term postmodernism commences fragmentation, includes college, and the use of variety of voices, settings, and identities. They frequently hold the modernist master narratives in low regard because they see them to be political dubious. Instead, they delve into popular cultures. Many authors want for open, less established genres to serve as a platform for these postmodern ideas. Now I'm going to finish with the unit 4, that is literature genres. This starts with the lesson 1, that is poetry. Poetry has been around for almost 4,000 years. Poetry is the natural fruit of solitude and mediation, eloquence, and the relationship between the world and the person experiencing reality. What is poetry? Poetry is a kind of literature that uses a condensed lyrical arrangement of words to express a notion. The poetic texts have a tendency to relative brevity, with some notable exceptions. Dense, expressive, displays a musical or song-like quality, be syntactical and more political overstructure. Types of poetry. There are 3 types of poetry. There are narrative poetry, epics, the Macmock, and above. Dramatic poetry is poetry in which the speaker is clearly somewhere out there than the poet. Some of the best dramatic poetry consists of dialogue in which more than one character speaks. Another kind of dramatic poetry in dramatic dialogue, a speech in which a fictional character expresses his or her thoughts and feelings which develop situation. Lyrics poetry Writers express their thoughts and feelings about the subject in a brief but musical way. A lyric poem is a comparatively short, non-narrative poem in which a single speaker presents a state of mind or an emotional state. The structure of a poem may be described in terms as stanza form. Its meter stanza is a unit number, and prosodic features, method, and rhythm key terms. Prosodic meter, prosodic in the story of speech, rhythm, and versification. The method for this, there are various possibilities for metricals, patterns in poetry. A central meter, each line has the same number of stresses but varies in the total number of syllables. Syllable meter in each line. A central syllabic meter in each line has the same number of stresses and three verse irregular pairs of string sibilants. Now, poetic devices smile, a figurative speech involving the comparison of the one thing with another. Smiles are usually in a phrase that begins with has or like. Example, she is like the wind. Metaphor, the terms of phrase is applied to something that cannot be literally applicable. Now, metaphors suggest a direct comparison without using like or has. Example, the snow is white blanket. It's a white blanket. Now we have the alliteration, onomatopoeia, hyperbole, and I going to follow with the next short history. A short history is a work of prose fiction that is meant to evoke a single effect. A short history is a distinct literature form and it tells the plot, resonance, and other dynamic. Short history, general information. Short history, a work of fiction that is too brief to publish in a single book. Short history, some elements for this is introduction, the reader meets the characters, recent actions builds up the story, longest part. Then we have the climax, here is the reader finds out what's happened to the conflict, and filing actions. There are four types of conclusion too, that are expository happy, expository sad, expository or twist, and unrestful endorsement. Then some characters type are protagonists, antagonists, flat, round, dynamic, static, and character analysis. The author way choose any or 6 ways to reveal a character to reader. Physical appearance. These are some 6 ways that character needs to have. Physical appearance, things that the character says, things that character does actions, things that character thinks, things other character says about the characters, about information. And then we have the conflict drives the plot forward. The reader discovers the conflict by the end of the introduction. Then we have the other that is the other lesson there, novels. Novels, many of the terms used in short stories specifically setting are also employed in novels. In accordance with their subject matter styles and the target audience, novels can be divided into genres: romance, science fiction, fantasy, mystery, and thriller. Exciting, right? And then the stylist writes use many different techniques to attract the reader interest and attention to the things that they are reading. Then we have the structure of the novel is a typical follows a narrative arcs that can be broken down into several key parts: exposition, recent actions, climax, falling actions and resolution, and many more. Some elements for the novels are settings, characters, points of view, themes, style, some symbol lines, and now with the drama, the lesson with the drama. Drama is a genre of literature that encompasses plays and theatrical performance. In English drama has evolved over centuries with significant contributions from various playwrights and periods. Drama in English literature, English drama, Jacobean drama, restorative drama, Victorian drama, modern drama in the 20th centuries, American drama, colonial and revolution drama, 19th centuries, the Harlem Renaissance, modern and contemporary drama, and the elements for the drama are plot. The plot refers to the sequence of events that occurs in the play. Dialogue that is the conversation between the characters. The theme refers to the underlying message of central idea of the play. Setting of the play refers to the theme, place, and environment. And conflict is a fundamental element of the drama, of course. And we have the stagecraft, that technical visual effects and place production that makes this very significant and grateful. Then we have the comedy, is a type of drama that aims to enter and amuse the audience through humor and layerness. Comedies often feature varying levels. Melodrama. Then we have absurdity drama, musical drama that makes amazing the drama. Then we have the lesson 5 with the essays. To begin learning about essays and how they are written, we have to define what they are. An essay has a base conflict in reading, and essays. To begin learning about essays and how they are written, we have to define what they are. An essay impedes notification academics reading. Main type of essays are, for example, expository, descriptive, persuasive, argumentative. And some main features for these are to specific, a clear, a precise explanation of facts. Semi-formal, doesn't contain first-person nouns, adjectives, and there are some that. Then we have the descriptive essay. A descriptive essay is a type of reading that provides a detailed description of each literature. Main feature, typical descript, issues inside there, the feature of formal greeting. Narrative essay. Main features that are, don't confuse a narrative essay with a short history, they are not quite the same. Persuasive argument essay. Persuasive essay is a type of essay where a writer has to persuade a reader to adopt a side of already what's called. Main feature, to establish a state as a reader needs to create a persuasive essay which should capture is convincing, accurate. And for a persuasive essay, have an identified point of view, maintains the reader's interest, use sounds reasoning, use solid evidence. And then we have the biography, the lesson 5 biography. That is, a biography is a written account of narrative person life. It provides a detailed and significant event through their lifetime. Biographies typically cover various aspects of a person's life, including their personal background, education, career, marriage, relationship, contribution, and all that type of things. The type of biography that exists are comprehensive biography, autobiography, memoir, collective biography, author biography. And the structure for this can be very depending of the author's styles, projects, because however, there are some common elements that needs to be, that, for example, friendship, the life. Well, and then this needs to have the personal and professional, the introduction of the person, the challenges of obstacles, impact and contribute personal life and relationship, as I mentioned before, the conclusion and additional sections. These are some of the that the biorhythm needs to have, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. This was the things that I learned in this class in this semester, and be honest with you, I learned a lot with this because I learned many things that before I didn't know, but now I'm pretty sure that if you ask me something, I'm going to provide you an answer, a good answer, of course. And thank you so much for watching my video. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye bye.